replacing a delivery system with a 5,000 or 4,000 robot is a lot cheaper. And it's not charging you 25%, it's charging you zero. The only cost you have is charging the robot battery. That's it.
That's actually pretty crazy. So they're going to be replacing...
Have you seen them yet? So they have in Santa Monica. They have in Washington, D.C. There's these like igloo boxes, and they'll stop on the stop sign. Just like a car, yeah.
Salim Development Group.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I am Tahir Salim, your host, CEO of Salim Development Group. Today, we're going to talk about how to navigate real estate in today's tech era. I started real estate development and business development about 24 years ago. And the things have changed drastically in the last 24 years. About 24 years, I had a cell phone that was, probably 2 pounds. Now the cell phones are very small and much more powerful. My cell phone, or everybody's cell phone, has now become basically a computer that they keep in their pocket. 24 years ago, there was no such thing as Bluetooth. The measurement devices were far different than they are now, and a cell phone was really a cell phone, unlike today, which is basically a computer and a phone mixed or merged into one. So let's talk about some of the benefits we have received having the newer technology. First, I'm going to talk about Bluetooth. Everybody or almost everybody is using Bluetooth in their car. I happen to use Bluetooth probably an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. I travel from restaurant to restaurant, business to business, and my typical driving distance every day is about 110 miles, taking about 2 hours. And of those 2 hours, I am talking on the phone for about 90 minutes to an hour. So the Bluetooth has made the work much more efficient than it was 24 years ago. So basically, I'm working 2 hours in the car, which I would not have been a long time ago. The other thing I want to talk about is digital measuring devices. Right now, you can get a handheld digital measuring device, or you can get an application for your cell phone, which will make it into a digital measuring device. It used to be that you had a tape measure and measure 8 feet, 10 or 12 feet, and sometimes two people hold it because it was difficult to keep it from one point to another point constant. So it required usually two people, especially if the longer measurement is required. Today, you could use your cell phone with the application, measure wall to wall you measure wall to wall, measure every wall in a room, and measure every room in a house or an office, and measure auxiliary spaces as well. And after you're done, the computer application will do that calculation for you. It'll do the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fraction, and decimals in a very easy manner. And it will record all the data or keep it recorded in the cell phone, and you can recall it at a later time. So these measurements can be used later on to calculate the square footage automatically by the calculator or the computer, the square footage, the perimeter, and the surface area. And we use this information to calculate the carpeting or the flooring, the electrical requirements for piping, plastic piping, plumbing requirements for piping, the drywall, painting, so on and so forth. So for estimating purposes, this has become very critical, and the newer technology has been instrumental. One of the most important things in today for restaurants or fast food with drive-thrus is the AI technology-based drive-through communication system. Currently, the California minimum wage is about $16 an hour. It's going to $20 an hour in April. Most of the United States of America, the minimum wage is between $7.25 an hour to $11 an hour. California will be almost double. And that will put a lot of businesses at risk of closure or at least problematic in terms of their survival. So if you use AI-based digital communication, then the order will be taken by a robot or a application in the computer, and that will eliminate at least one person on all shifts. If you're able to reduce just one person in each shift, that's about 14 hours a day. And that equates to about $300 per day, $9,000 a month. And if a business is generating extra $9,000 a month that they were not generating before, now they can offset significant increases in cost, wages, by that $9,000. And the other thing I want to emphasize is the dangers of when a business is not performing at its best, or its finances are not as good as they should be. One thing that happens is the repairs are not done as often as they should be, and the equipment is not replaced or maintained as well as should have been, which reduces the quality of the food, and it reduces the longevity of that equipment eventually, and it also increases the inconsistency of the food quality. So that's what happens to the business. And then what also happens to the business is if they're not making the money that they should be making, and their financial difficulties, they may be late on rent to a landlord, and they may also be paying reduced rent, or sometimes even stop paying rent because they just can't afford it. And when the landlord does not receive the rent, then that's a cascading effect. And when the landlord receives limited amount of rent, what happens is the landlord cannot do its part of maintenance, for example, on the landscaping and the building outside of the building, if that was landlord's responsibility, and the quality of the shopping center will go down. In addition, the banks require something called DCR, or debt coverage ratio, which is typically 1.3 or 30% greater. Your bank payment should be 30% less than your rent. So if your rent was $10,000, if your rent was $13,000, your bank payment should not exceed $10,000. So if your bank payment was $10,000, your rent should be at least $13,000 or greater. When your rent drops below that ratio, even if the landlord is able to make the payments to the bank puts the landlord in a technical default. And that technical default will prevent the landlord to refinance the property, and it will also require, or may require, the bank, for its legal reasons, to put that real estate in a technical default, or that technical default into what's called a toxic asset. So it becomes a toxic asset. It's an asset that bank wants to eliminate, so bank won't refinance it, and bank will try to sell that note to another note buying company at a reduced amount, and when the time comes for that note to become due, it will not be refinanced, and the landlord could be in serious jeopardy for having the property foreclosed. And the last thing is, the landlord could also be in trouble because them being in technical default, the bank can technically foreclose on the property if they chose to. So it puts the landlord in a serious jeopardy when the rent is reduced. So a business that's not strong leads to a landlord that is not in good financial condition or financial situation, which again then leads to bad relationship with the bank. So that tells you how critical AI could become for saving labor costs in California. So one thing that I've been noticing more and more, which is the delivery system or the delivery robots in urban areas. I've noticed that in Washington, D.C., I'm noticing that in Santa Monica, and I'm noticing it in other urban areas. Well, this device is godsend. If you can eliminate or reduce the cost of deliveries to a business, and basically the only cost you would have is charging a robot battery. You would be saving, or the business would be saving 23 to 25% on delivery charges. So a lot of businesses, for example, when they're a food business and their total is $100, well, $24 or $23 or $25, depending on the company, is going to Postmates or other delivery companies. So when you're losing 23 to 25%, that's probably most of your profit, most of it. And so you're almost breaking even. There's not a lot of profit to be made after paying these delivery companies. Now, the other option is to raise the prices, which some people do, but you can only raise the prices so much because ultimately the customer is not happy when you raise the prices too much. And then there's also a limit to how much you can raise the prices. So these robots are not charging 23% or 24% of your gross revenue. They're charging you zero. What your cost is the cost to buy the robot, or it's actually more like a car or a small transportation device. It looks like a box, igloo box with wheels in the bottom. And it has AI-based logic programming. And so your cost would be to buy that robot. I'm not sure what it is, but it's probably a couple thousand, $2,000 to $3,000, maybe $5,000. I'm not sure how the pricing works depending on the sophistication, but I think it's between $2,000 to $3,000, $5,000 on the higher end. Well, replacing a delivery system with a $5,000 or $4,000 robot is a lot cheaper, and it's not charging you 25%. It's charging you zero. The only cost you have is charging the robot battery. That's it. The newest architecture programs have incorporated latest AI technology. They can generate 3D images that are fantastic. They can definitely do 2D, but they can do 3D. And by changing certain parameters, changing the dimensions of certain walls, by changing certain architectural features, changing heights and widths, which along with angles, and also changing colors of different walls, you can get a completely different feel of the building, of the rooms, of the open spaces. And that was not there at the level that it is today. Even 10, 15 years ago, they had a small amount of that, but now it's to a different level. And you can superimpose images of one thing on another thing. So you could superimpose a chair on the floor and something else that's on the chair, or you could superimpose a table. You can put stuff on the table, and you can put whatever you put on the table, something on top of that. And you can rotate the tables, you can rotate chairs, you can rotate rooms, you can change different angles. Maybe the rooms are not going to be right angles. Maybe you might have a room that's circular, or you might make a room that has sort of octagon shape, or a wall that has a different angle. Anyway, a lot of those effects, someone can try and see how effective it is, and just trial and error, because you're just changing the picture on a computer screen instead of making any real changes. So that has become very critical. And I think it's going to go even better and better. And I'm hoping one day it goes to the level of holograms, where you can see in 3 dimensions what something's going to look like. So another thing I want to talk about, the advantages or the new technology has, is the quality of databases and the way the information is put together. Today, we can take the database, for example, on wind speed in a certain area where if someone's going to install wind turbines, you need a certain speed for the wind. And to get the optimum wind speed, you need to be at a certain location. So if on a hill, the wind speed is different at different locations. And if you have historical data and you can do mathematical modeling to project what would be the optimum location for that wind turbine. And the difference could be substantial. For example, in Amarillo, the average wind speed is like 12 or 13 miles per hour. And if you are if you're operating a turbine at 13 miles per hour wind speed versus 6 miles per hour wind speed, the difference is actually not almost twice. It could be 4 or 5 times more energy, or 6 or 7 times more energy, because it's not a linear effect, or it's not a one-to-one effect. So getting an optimal location could be actually be almost 8 times more energy. If you double the wind speed, the energy production may go up 8 times. So small amount of differences in wind speed will translate into large amount of energy generated. So using the right technology would be very helpful in this situation. I think the next big breakthrough is going to be when people can go from one point to another point by just flying into these basically these small cars, or call it whatever you want. I'm looking forward to that, because right now it's taking me about 2 hours a day of driving, but the locations where I'm going, because there's so much traffic, especially in Los Angeles, I would believe that my distance would be, in terms of time, would probably end up being 40 to 45 minutes instead of 2 hours. And all you're doing is using basically a larger version of the devices that we have now. So basically what I'm talking about is today's drones would become larger, and they will take place of some of the smaller helicopters that we use now. If the drone's battery capacity is increased and its flying speed is increased, which it is increasing as some of the testing is being done, and the safety is getting better and better, and the safety is going to be as good as today's helicopters, or if not better, that will be transforming the efficiency completely. I spent 2 hours driving on average, and I believe that would take about 45 minutes. Also, I think it would be much more exciting to fly instead of drive, because you're not stuck in traffic. Let's wait and see. So basically, I think the technology is going in the direction where people are putting in their own orders when they go to a restaurant. People are going to be talking to a robot when they're in a drive-through, and people are going to be encountering robots in some of the retail spaces. So not everybody will be replaced with a robot, I believe, but I think that it's not inconceivable that 20 to 40% of the workforce becomes either AI-based communication system or a robot, or replaced with a robot. So 20 to 40% is what I think in next 15 years. It could actually be even greater. And the other reason that's adding to it is in a lot of jobs, such as restaurant jobs or other cleaning jobs, are not favored by a lot of people. So a lot of people prefer not to, for example, work at McDonald's or another restaurant. Not McDonald's individually, but not exclusively, but fast food in general. So when there's a difficulty in getting people to come to work for you, and there's a turnover problem, and there is a turnover problem in fast food industry significantly, well, if you have 20 to 30 to 40% of the people replaced, well, you have the same number of people, but fewer jobs. That's automatically going to make it easier for the employer. So in conclusion, I believe the AI will definitely replace or help replacing some of the jobs in fast food industry, in some of the other retail industry, anywhere there's monotonous tasks, that would be reduced. And lastly, I believe that the transportation is going to change drastically in the next 10 to 15 years when you have drone-like helicopters carrying people, one or two people, for at least for short distances, if not medium distances. Thank you guys for watching this week's podcast on navigating real estate in the tech era. See you guys next week.
Salim Development Group.